The debris field stretched across 3 kilometers of space, twisted metal and crystalline fragments catching the light of distant stars like a graveyard of broken dreams. Captain Sarah Mitchell adjusted her helmet's display, trying to make sense of the carnage that had once been a Zalari fleet. Her reconnaissance unit had stumbled across the aftermath while patrolling the contested border zone, and what they'd found defied every tactical manual she'd ever studied. "Skipper, you seeing this?" Corporal Jake Rivers' voice crackled through her comm as he maneuvered his EVA suit around what appeared to be the remains of a command vessel. These ships weren't just destroyed, they were systematically dismantled. Someone knew exactly where to hit them. Sarah drifted closer to the largest piece of wreckage, her suit's lights revealing hull plating that seemed to shift color even in the vacuum of space. Zalari biotechnology was still largely a mystery to human science, but she'd seen enough battlefield reports to recognize a royal vessel when she saw one. The organic curves and living metal construction were unmistakable, as was the crown-like superstructure that had housed the quantum communication arrays. "Martinez, Singh, continue the sweep," she ordered her other 2 squad members. "Document everything but don't touch anything. Command will want a full analysis." "Copy that," came the dual response as her team spread out through the debris field. Sarah was about to follow them when her suit's life signs detector picked up something impossible, a faint biosignature coming from inside the wreckage. Her training kicked in immediately, the same instincts that had kept her alive through 3 years of border skirmishes and 2 major fleet actions. Enemy wounded were to be avoided unless they posed an immediate threat, but something about the readings nagged at her. The signal was weak, erratic, and definitely not human. But it was also consistent with someone in severe distress. "Rivers, I'm reading a life sign in Section 7 of the command hull. Probably a survivor." "Standing orders are to avoid contact unless they're shooting at us," Jake replied, though she could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "You want me to mark it for the cleanup crews?" Sarah hesitated, studying the readings. The biosignature was fading, whoever was in there wouldn't last much longer. "Negative. Continue your sweep. I'm going to take a closer look." She could practically hear Jake's eye roll through the comm. "Sarah, you know I have to log everything we do out here. If command finds out you're playing medic to enemy combatants." "Then don't log it," she said, cutting the channel and propelling herself toward the damaged hull. The breach in the ship's side was large enough to fly a shuttle through, the edges still glowing faintly with residual energy from whatever weapon had caused it. Sarah activated her suit's cutting laser and began clearing away the smaller debris blocking her path. The metal seemed to heal itself as she cut, forcing her to work quickly before the ship's biosystem sealed her out. Inside, emergency lighting cast everything in an eerie blue glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. The corridors were filled with what looked like metallic foam, some kind of emergency sealant that had hardened to preserve atmosphere in the undamaged sections. Sarah followed her detector deeper into the ship, past chambers filled with equipment she couldn't identify and walls covered in symbols that seemed to writhe when she wasn't looking directly at them. The life sign was coming from what appeared to be the ship's central chamber, a spherical room dominated by a throne-like structure that rose from the floor like a growing tree. And trapped beneath a fallen support beam, barely visible in the dim lighting, was a figure that made Sarah's breath catch. The woman was clearly Zalari, her pointed ears and luminescent skin marking her as one of the enemy. But there was something else, something about the intricate crown-like device fused to her skull and the way the ship's remaining systems seemed to pulse in rhythm with her labored breathing. Sarah had seen intelligence briefings about Zalari royalty, and this wasn't just any enemy combatant. "Well, this just got complicated," she muttered, checking her oxygen levels and trying to estimate how long she could stay. The alien woman's eyes opened as Sarah approached, violet irises that seemed to hold depths of intelligence and pain. She tried to speak, but only a whisper of air escaped her lips. Her legs were clearly crushed beneath the beam, and the neural crown that connected her to her ship's system sparked intermittently, sending jolts of pain across her features. Sarah knelt beside her, running her scanner over the injuries. The readings were worse than she'd feared: spinal damage, internal bleeding, and what looked like severe neural trauma from the damaged interface. Without immediate medical attention, the woman would be dead within hours. "Rivers, what's your ETA on the sweep?" she asked, making her decision. 20 minutes, maybe 30. "Why?" "I need you to cover for me. Tell Martinez and Singh I'm investigating a possible intelligence cache. Don't mention the survivor." "Sarah, what are you planning?" She was already reaching for her emergency medical kit, the same supplies that were supposed to keep her team alive until evac arrived. "Something stupid, probably. But it's the right kind of stupid." The Zalari woman's eyes tracked her movements as Sarah began setting up a field 4 and checking her supply of military-grade painkillers. When their eyes met, Sarah saw something that transcended species barriers: gratitude, hope, and a desperate intelligence that begged for a chance to live. "Okay, Your Majesty," Sarah said softly, not sure if the alien could understand her but needing to fill the silence. "Let's see if human medicine can keep you breathing long enough to figure out what happens next." The neural crown sparked again, and for a moment, Sarah could have sworn she felt something touch her mind, a whisper of thought that carried more meaning than words. Whatever this woman was, whoever she was, Sarah had just committed herself to keeping her alive. Even if it meant court-martial. Even if it meant treason. Sometimes doing the right thing meant ignoring every regulation in the book. 3 days into what Sarah had privately dubbed the worst career decision of my life, she was beginning to understand why first contact protocols existed in the first place. The Zalari woman, who had managed to communicate through painstaking gestures that her name was something like Lythera, had needs that no human medical manual had prepared Sarah for. "Let me get this straight," Jake said, floating beside her in the makeshift shelter they'd constructed in the ship's least damaged section. "She's royalty, she's paralyzed, she can't eat our food, and she's apparently connected to some kind of hive mind that's currently offline due to her injuries. Did I miss anything?" "The part where enemy patrol ships have been sweeping this sector every 6 hours," Sarah replied, adjusting the jury-rigged life support system she'd cobbled together from their suits and the ship's remaining power cells. "And the part where she seems to think there's something important she needs to tell us." Lythera lay propped against what had once been part of her throne, her violet eyes bright with frustration as she tried to communicate through gestures and crude drawings. The neural crown that adorned her head like living jewelry sparked occasionally, sending ripples of pain across her features that she bore with royal dignity. "Okay, but here's what I don't understand," Jake continued, unpacking another ration pack with theatrical disgust. "Why are we risking our necks for enemy royalty? I mean, I get the whole wounded warrior thing, but this is literally the person who's been coordinating attacks on our colonies." Sarah paused in her work, studying Lythera's face. "I don't think she has been. Look at her ship. This isn't a warship, it's a diplomatic vessel. And the way it was attacked, the precision of the strikes. Someone wanted her dead specifically, not just any Zalari commander." As if sensing their discussion, Lythera struggled to lift her hand, pointing urgently at the walls around them. The ship's bioluminescent panels were covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as Sarah watched, forming patterns that hurt her eyes if she stared too long. "She's trying to activate something," Sarah realized, moving closer. "But the neural interface is too damaged for her to control it properly." Lythera managed to touch one of the panels, and suddenly the chamber filled with holographic displays showing star charts, fleet movements, and what looked like attack plans. Sarah's breath caught as she recognized human colony locations marked with symbols that definitely didn't look friendly. "Well, that's ominous," Jake observed. "Should I be preparing for imminent doom, or is this the good kind of alien intelligence briefing?" Lythera pointed frantically at one of the displays, showing a Zalari fleet moving toward the Kepler colonies. But as Sarah watched, she realized the ships weren't flying in standard attack formations. They were moving like raiders, not military vessels, and their target wasn't the colony itself but the orbital defense platforms. "They're going to frame the military for terrorist attacks," Sarah breathed, understanding flooding through her. Make it look like official Zolari forces are targeting civilians. The holographic display shifted again, showing internal communications between ships bearing military markings but using non-standard protocols. Sarah couldn't read Zolari script, but the tactical patterns were clear enough. These weren't official fleet actions, they were false flag operations designed to escalate the war. So our paralyzed queen here is actually a peace advocate who got too close to exposing a conspiracy, Jake summarized. And now the bad guys think she's dead, which gives us a temporary advantage assuming we can figure out how to use it. Lythera nodded emphatically, then pointed at Sarah and gestured toward the communication console. Her meaning was clear, she needed Sarah to help her send a warning to someone, but the ship's systems were too damaged for normal operation. The quantum communication array might still be functional, Sarah mused, studying the readouts. But it would require a direct neural interface, and she can't connect properly with her injuries. What happened next defied every regulation about alien contact in the military handbook. Lythera reached out and grasped Sarah's hand, her touch sending a jolt of sensation that was definitely not electric. For a moment, Sarah felt something impossible, a whisper of alien thoughts touching the edge of her consciousness, desperate and urgent. Help me save both our peoples, *. The voice in her mind was barely perceptible, more emotion than words. The war must not continue. Sarah jerked her hand back, staring at Lythera in shock. Did she just what? Jake asked, oblivious to what had happened. Nothing, Sarah said quickly. Just static from the damaged systems. But I think I understand what she needs. The next few hours involved a level of improvisation that would have made her engineering instructors either proud or horrified. Using components from their suits and the ship's bioneural networks, Sarah managed to create a crude interface that could amplify Lythera's damaged connection to the communication array. This is either brilliant or suicidal, Jake observed as Sarah made the final connections. Possibly both. The story of my career, Sarah replied, then looked at Lythera. Ready? The Zolari Queen nodded, and Sarah activated the interface. Immediately, the ship came alive around them, systems responding to Lythera's will as she fought through the pain to establish contact with loyalist forces. The holographic displays flickered with incoming messages, tactical updates, and what looked like very surprised responses to communications from a queen presumed dead. But the effort was taking its toll. Lythera's bio-readings spiked dangerously as she pushed her damaged neural pathways beyond their limits, blood trickling from her nose as she struggled to maintain the connection. She's killing herself, Sarah realized, moving to disconnect the interface. Lythera caught her wrist with surprising strength, her violet eyes blazing with determination. In that touch, Sarah felt another whisper of thought, some things are worth dying for. The Zolari ships materialized out of hyperspace like predators emerging from deep water, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing with aggressive patterns that Sarah's combat training recognized as distinctly unfriendly. Through the makeshift shelter's viewport, she watched 3 vessels take up positions around the wreckage, their weapon ports already glowing with accumulated energy. Well, this is problematic, Jake observed, checking his sidearm with the calm professionalism of someone who'd been in hopeless situations before. Should I assume these aren't the good guys coming to rescue their beloved queen? Sarah was monitoring the communication intercepts that Lythera had managed to establish before collapsing from neural exhaustion. The queen lay unconscious, her breathing shallow and her bio-readings erratic, but the data streaming through the damaged systems told a grim story. The approaching ships belonged to Commander Vextai's faction, the same group responsible for the original attack on the royal convoy. They're not here for a rescue, Sarah confirmed, watching boarding pods detach from the lead vessel. According to these intercepts, they think she's already dead. They're here to clean up loose ends and retrieve any intelligence she might have gathered. And if they find out she's alive? Lythera's eyes fluttered open at the sound of their voices, violet irises focusing with obvious effort. She tried to speak, managing only a whisper that Sarah had to lean close to hear. Vextai will kill me, blame humans, escalate war. Sarah felt the familiar touch of alien thoughts brushing against her consciousness, stronger now despite Lythera's weakened state. Images flashed through her mind, detention centers filled with human prisoners, orbital bombardments of civilian targets, peace advocates on both sides silenced by mysterious accidents. The terrorist faction wasn't just trying to continue the war, they were planning to make it genocidal. How long until they board? Sarah asked Jake, who was monitoring their approach on the damaged sensors. 10 minutes, maybe less. They're being thorough about scanning the wreckage first. Sarah made a decision that would have horrified her commanding officers. She activated her suit's emergency beacon, broadcasting on all human military frequencies. If they were going to die here, at least command would know what they'd discovered. Mitchell to any human forces in range. Priority Alpha intelligence package follows. Zalari terrorist faction planning false flag operations against civilian targets. Recommend immediate fleet-wide alert and protective protocols for all colonies. Sarah, what are you doing? Jake hissed. You just revealed our position to everyone within 50 light-years. Good, Sarah replied, then switched to the Zalari frequency that Lythera had shown her. Speaking slowly and clearly, she repeated the message in broken Zalari, adding the royal authentication codes that the Queen had managed to teach her. The effect was immediate. The boarding pods suddenly changed course, vectoring toward their shelter instead of the main wreckage. Sarah could hear harsh voices through the hull as armed figures took positions around their hiding place. This is Commander Vextai of the Zalari Defense Corps, a voice announced through their communicator, speaking heavily accented standard. Surrender the human spies and prepare for immediate execution. Sarah looked at Lythera, who was struggling to remain conscious despite her injuries. The neural crown around her head sparked weakly, and Sarah felt another whisper of thought, asterisk he cannot know I live. Everything depends on this, asterisk. I have a really bad idea, Sarah whispered to Jake. Those are usually your best ones, he replied, checking his weapon one more time. Sarah activated the communicator. Commander Vextai, this is Captain Sarah Mitchell of the Human Defense Corps. I'm prepared to discuss terms for the exchange of prisoners. There are no prisoners, human. Only enemies of the Zalari people. Then you won't be interested in the intelligence data we've recovered from Queen Lythera's personal files before she died, Sarah bluffed, hoping her voice didn't betray her desperation. The silence that followed stretched for several heartbeats before Vextai responded. You will bring this data to us immediately. Any attempt at deception will result in slow death. I'm afraid that's not possible, Sarah continued, feeling Lythera's weak grip on her wrist. The data is encoded with Zalari Royal Biometrics. It can only be accessed by someone with direct neural interface capabilities. More silence, then the sound of movement outside their shelter. Sarah could see shapes through the translucent walls, weapons trained on their position from multiple angles. You have 5 minutes to transfer this data, human. Then we will retrieve it from your corpse. Sarah looked at Jake, who was staring at her with the expression of someone who just realized his commanding officer had completely lost her mind. Please tell me you have a plan beyond stall until the cavalry arrives. The cavalry isn't coming, Sarah admitted. But I'm betting that Vextai doesn't know everything about Zalari Royal technology. She turned to Lythera, whose violet eyes were watching her with growing understanding. The neural crown flickered more brightly as the Queen gathered her remaining strength, and Sarah felt the alien presence in her mind growing stronger. You would risk everything for someone you barely know, asterisk. Someone has to, asterisk Sarah thought back, surprised at how natural the mental communication felt. Asterisk besides, you're not just someone. You're the key to preventing a genocide, asterisk. What happened next defied every tactical manual Sarah had ever studied. Instead of surrendering or fighting, she helped Lythera sit up against the wall, positioning her so that the neural crown was clearly visible through the shelter's viewport. Then she activated the communicator one last time. Commander Vextai, I think you should see this for yourself. Your queen would like a word with you. The explosion of activity outside their shelter was immediate and violent. Sarah could hear shouted orders, weapons charging, and what sounded like frantic communications with the ships overhead. Through it all, Lythera sat motionless, her presence filling Sarah's mind with calm determination and something that felt remarkably like hope. Well, Jake observed, this is either the most brilliant strategic maneuver I've ever witnessed, or we just signed our own death warrants. Probably both, Sarah replied, watching armed figures converge on their position. But at least it'll be interesting. Commander Vextai stood in the entrance to their shelter like death incarnate, his bioarmor pulsing with aggressive patterns that made Sarah's combat implants scream warnings. His pointed ears were adorned with neural interfaces that sparked with barely contained violence, and his violet eyes held the cold calculation of someone who had killed for ideology and found it satisfying. Impossible, he breathed, staring at Lythera with a mixture of rage and disbelief. You died in the attack. I verified the destruction personally. Lythera raised her head with visible effort, and when she spoke, her voice carried the unmistakable authority of someone born to rule. Disappointed, Vextai. You always were a poor strategist. Even when you were my student. Sarah felt the mental connection between them surge as Lythera drew on reserves of strength she shouldn't have possessed. Through their link, she could sense the Queen's plan unfolding. Desperate, dangerous, and requiring a level of trust that transcended species. Your reign ends here, Vextai snarled, raising his weapon. The Zalari people will never accept peace with the human vermin. Your death will ensure that this war continues until their entire species is extinct. Actually, Jake interjected with the timing of someone who'd been waiting for the perfect moment to be unhelpful. I think you're going to find that plan has some significant flaws. Vextai's attention shifted to the human soldier, giving Lythera the opening she needed. Sarah felt the Queen's consciousness expand through the neural link they'd established, not just reaching out to the damaged ship around them, but somehow connecting to every piece of Zalari technology in the area. What are you doing? Sarah whispered, feeling the strain as Lythera pushed her damaged neural pathways beyond their limits. Showing him the price of betrayal, came the reply, accompanied by images that flooded Sarah's mind, weapons systems awakening, power cores overloading, and the terrible beauty of a royal will imposing itself on rebellious technology. The ship around them began to sing. Every bioluminescent panel flared to life, creating patterns of light that pulsed in harmony with Lythera's heartbeat. The damaged systems responded to her call, power flowing through circuits that had been dead for days. But more importantly, Sarah could feel the Queen's presence extending beyond their shelter, reaching out to touch the minds of every Zalari in the area. Impossible, Vextai repeated, but now his voice carried uncertainty. The network connections were severed. You cannot reach the quantum consciousness without your neural crown. Lythera smiled, an expression that held no mercy whatsoever. I am not using my crown, traitor. I am using hers. Sarah felt the truth of it hit her like a physical blow. Somehow, through their mental connection, she had become a conduit for Lythera's will. Her human neural patterns were serving as a bridge, allowing the Queen to bypass her damaged implants and connect directly to the Zalari quantum network. The effect was immediate and devastating. Vextai's soldiers suddenly found their weapons refusing to fire, their armor locking up, their communication systems broadcasting their real orders to every Zalari ship in the system. The terrorist plot was laid bare in excruciating detail, transmitted through the quantum network to every corner of the Dominion. You're killing yourself, Sarah gasped as she felt Lythera's neural pathways burning out from the strain. The Queen's bio-readings were spiking beyond critical levels, her body convulsing as she pushed her damaged nervous system beyond all safe limits. Some sacrifices are worth making, Lythera replied, her mental voice growing fainter. But perhaps this one does not have to be permanent. Sarah felt the Queen's intention a moment before she acted on it, and the implications terrified her. No, you can't. The neural integration would be irreversible. Only if you resist it. Trust me, Sarah Mitchell. Trust us, *. The choice was simple and terrible. Lythera was offering to share not just her consciousness but her very existence, creating a permanent neural link that would save both their lives but forever change what they were. Sarah would gain the Queen's connection to the Zalari network, while Lythera would gain access to human neural patterns that could bypass her damaged implants. "Sarah, what's happening?" Jake asked, watching her with growing alarm as bioelectric currents began to dance between her and the alien Queen. "Something that's either going to save two civilizations or create the galaxy's first interspecies hybrid consciousness," Sarah replied, then looked into Lythera's violet eyes. "Do it." The integration was like lightning and music and dying and being born all at once. Sarah felt her consciousness expand beyond the boundaries of her skull, touching the vast network of minds that connected every Zalari across dozens of star systems. At the same time, she felt Lythera's presence settling into her thoughts like a dear friend coming home. "We are still ourselves," the Queen's voice whispered in her mind, but also something new. When the transformation stabilized, Sarah found she could move with Lythera's memories guiding her, while the Queen's paralyzed body responded to Sarah's will as if it were her own. They were two minds in two bodies, but connected by neural pathways that transcended the boundaries of species. Vextai and his remaining soldiers were already under arrest, taken into custody by loyalist forces who had received the damning evidence through the quantum network. The terrorist plot was exposed, the war criminals identified, and the path to peace suddenly clear. "Well," Jake said finally, "I'm definitely going to need to update my after-action report. How exactly do I classify a successful mission that ended with my commanding officer becoming half-alien?" Sarah laughed, feeling Lythera's amusement echo through their shared consciousness. "Put down, diplomatic breakthrough through innovative neural networking. Command loves buzzwords." 6 months later, Sarah stood on the observation deck of the first joint Human-Zalari research station, watching ships from both species dock side by side. Her reflection in the viewport showed the subtle changes. Her eyes now held flecks of violet, and she could feel the constant presence of the quantum network humming at the edge of her consciousness. "Any regrets?" Lythera asked through their link. Sarah smiled, feeling the Queen's presence like warmth in her mind. "Only that it took a war to bring us together. Though I have to admit, being the galaxy's first hybrid consciousness has its advantages." "Such as, asterisk." "Well, for one thing, I never have to worry about being lonely. And Jake's jokes are much funnier when I can appreciate them from an alien perspective." Their shared laughter echoed through both minds, a sound that somehow represented the future, two species learning to understand each other one connection at a time.